Hey, Mundo, real quick right there before we get into that, just because I'm curious, how did you set it up to where they were caught? In other words, how did you set it up to deflect as much suspicion away from yourself? Like, was it a setup where was it like were they tailing one of the guys and that's what led them to it? How did they set it up to where these guys got interdicted at the robbery?
I gave the task force the information about them looking to do a takeover bank robbery, and that I had given them the game and I had told them how to do it. In fact, I'm the one that suggested, rather than rob a teller, that they take over the bank. And I said, and so they were going to put surveillance on every player, on every member, and I advised them not to do that. I advised them to surveil Stoney's house. Stoney was one of the guys. Said surveil his house because that's going to be the staging area in San Pedro. So if you surveil everybody, what's going to happen is one of them you increase the probability of getting made, your tails. So just surveil Stoney's house and you'll see that will be the staging area, and you will know when the time is there. And sure enough, like a script being written for them, they later told me when they saw the cars arrive, a couple of cars arrived with some of the players, and when they arrived, their whole demeanor was complete. Instead of being laughing and joking, whatever, they had their game faces on. They were very serious, and they entered. They said, "Oh, keep an eye. Let's keep a close eye." So they enter the house, and when they exit it, they all come out, and you could tell they've got what do you call it, duffel bags. They have their clothing is buttoned up, and they're up to something. So now they've got the I think it was a helicopter, and they have some of the units doing parallel surveillance. And then when they saw where they ended up, ultimately they activated. Robbery homicide took over, and that's how they kept in touch. And later they told me after it happened. And so the shootout ensued with two of the suspects engaged in a shootout. One was killed, the other one was wounded, and two of them surrendered. So that's how it happened. That's how I.
What did the police use, though, as their reason for why they were there? I mean, were they following up? I mean, how did they explain it away? Because you just don't show up. Was it part of a standard surveillance thing? What I'm saying is, what was the police story to keep suspicion away from you?
I don't remember, but I know that it did deflect from me, and they didn't know me. They didn't know the information they received was from the task force. The task force guys had their robbery homicide contact and said, "Look, we're following these guys. This is going to take place here." They
So
didn't
the guys
know.
on the actual operation had no. That's what I'm
No,
saying. The task force was the cutout. They had no idea you even
no,
existed. All it was, they were operating on a tip.
no. Yes, you're absolutely right. And the task force guys didn't even want to be part of the takedown because they wanted to keep themselves clandestine. In other words, the information I would give them, they would feed to the locals. The locals would do the arrest, the enforcement, and then they would just be back.
That's referred to as a Chinese wall, where you're protecting your source, where the information originally started.
Yeah.
So means nothing, but that's just what we call it.
Okay, so here's the day that I get out, and I'm suspecting I got two guns. I got a 45 and a 9mm, one on each side of me. Like, that's going to make a difference. If I'm going to get whacked, I'm going to get whacked. Okay, it doesn't matter how many guns I have, but it made me feel comfortable, like a teddy bear. And so as I'm arriving at Joe Morgan's sister's house, I'm thinking, wait a minute. If these guys are going to whack me, they're not going to whack me at Joe's sister's house, So what are you concerned about? Just drive up, park, act natural like you always do, and let's see where this is going to go. And so I went. I get off. I knock on the door. His sister answers. She tells me go to the back. So I go to the back, knock. His wife, Jody, answers the door. Gives me a hug. I come in. He's watching TV. We're talking. talking business. And then that's when he produced the photograph of our bail bondswoman's husband. He's a Bob Mrazek. He was a dope dealer, and he was the husband of our bail bondswoman who was going through a divorce. So she wanted him killed so she could inherit everything. So what I did is thinking that I was being tested, I had an avenue of escape. All I had to do was pick up the phone and call Chili and tell him, "Okay, guys, I'm being asked to coordinate a hit. He doesn't want me to be the trigger man. He wants me to get a game youngster, and then I bow out, because once I do that, then all suspicion is going to come to me." But what did I do? I did everything but pull the trigger. I recruited the game youngster. I justified it because he was a dope dealer. You see what I'm saying? So I regressed in that regard. I mean, there's probably many law enforcement guys that'll say, "Who cares?" So so many even in the law enforcement community would say, "Who cares about this guy? You're you're bringing us bigger fish." And but I think the average police officer would not justify that. But I know there's some that would. But it doesn't matter who would and who wouldn't. At the end of the day, I made a decision to keep my undercover status intact, and to keep and to deflect any possible suspicion on me. I carried this. I found it easy to revert to an old way, and was responsible for this guy getting killed. That was the country.
Well, you mentioned a term a while ago. If you could explain it, you said that you didn't feel like they were
Right.
trying to rock you to sleep.
When you rock somebody to sleep, or, and I use the other term, to play somebody out of the box. When you play somebody out of the box, or you rock them to sleep, you make them feel comfortable, like everything's okay. But in reality, you're setting them up to be killed. You don't telegraph your intentions. "Hey, what's that? Hey, Steve Murphy, long time no see. All right, brother. We go here, go to a restaurant, and all along we're setting you up. Yeah. So
Yeah, gotcha.
yeah, I know.
I hate to be rocked to
And
sleep.
so, well, see, in my case, I wasn't going to be rocked to sleep, but it's like knowing when to fold them, knowing when to fold the tent. And in this case, I went all the way. I went, you know what I mean? I went rogue, and I kept that to myself. Uh, I kept that to myself until the murder charges were reopened. I think I mentioned Morgan was biting at the bit to find out what had happened on the last episode, and remember Morgan, and I said, "I'll get to it. I'll get to it." And, yeah. And well, they did reopen the murder cases, and when that happened, I said, I got that coming. I get that, for not being faithful to my mission, of saving lives. Here I am talking about not wanting to help put away people who were doing the same thing I was doing, and look what I ended up doing. You see, if it came easy to do that,
So what happened?
Oh, he was killed. It was a contract hit. The kid, I drove one of the getaway cars. Artie Guzman, the game youngster, walked up to him with the 45 I supplied, walked up to him at his place of business in Seal Beach, uh, ascertained that it was him. He had a picture to study. He knew what he looked like. He had his business card to make sure that when he asked for him specifically, when the guy answers, you make sure that is him. And then the 45, you put that sucker up to his head and make sure he's dead. And that's what happened. He killed him. One getaway driver brought him to my vehicle, and the getaway driver was my brother Angel. brings them. They both come to my vehicle. I told them how to do it. Take their time. Do not rush. Do not speed. If you see a black and white, act normal. Do not accelerate. And when you get to me, you just casually get out of the car. And then I instructed them further. Once they were in my vehicle and I'm driving off, the 405 freeway was nearby. They took off their sweatshirts, uh, gave them to my brother who was in the front seat to put in the glove compartment, murder weapon, glove compartment. Told Artie to lay down in the back seat. And then once we're on the 405, we're gone, you know. So all of this.
Yeah, keep doing that. But you also mentioned that they reopened the cases. You said something about also reopening cases.
Oh, yeah. So when they reopened the 2 murder cases from Kern County, the ones that I had been released on, I'm talking about how I saw that as poetic justice. And I realized, okay, you had the cases dismissed earlier. That was a blessing. Now you're going to pay for digressing. This is my thought. This is me thinking it, like this. So I'm kind of resigned to the fact that I'm going back. And so now that I'm back in custody, now everybody is aware that I'm up front. So now there's paperwork on me. And so everybody is made aware that I am an informant. So I called Chili in. I said, Chili, so I got one when I worked undercover that you're not aware of. And I'm going to let you know right now. And we worked out a deal with the prosecutor and for immunity against my brother and myself. My brother was, he was a getaway driver. The one they wanted was Joe Morgan, who put out the contract. They wanted Helen Mrazek, the wife, and they wanted the trigger man. And so I testified against all 3 of them in that case.
And in return for that, you got immunity for that charge.
Yes.
And what about the other 2 cases?
No, the other 2 cases were not part of that thing at all. No. Yeah, I ended up I ended up pleading guilty for the 2 murders, second-degree murders, and I ended up doing like another 5 years, which is nothing. It's easy for me to say. Yeah.
I was going to mention the scorn of a jilted woman is not to be trifled with.
No.
Taking her husband out. Holy cow.
But so you went back after you got out. How long are you out between when you beat the murders, the 2 murders the first time when they were dismissed, and you're out and you're working undercover, and then you go back in and do your 5 years? How much difference in time? You're about 27 then. When did you go back in?
78. So I was still 27.
You weren't even out a year then.
No.
You came full circle in a year.
14 months I worked undercover from March of 77 till May of 78. And about the last month was when this judge told me they were going to reopen the cases. I told the task force, I'm going to disappear for a little bit. I'm going to take the vacation I've never taken because of working undercover with you guys. And then when I turn myself in, I'm going to turn myself into you guys. Well, I got arrested before that happened, as I mentioned in the last episode. And I remember one time calling Howard Kingman to check in, to let him know that I was checking in. I says, look, I'm not going to renege on what I said. I am going to turn myself in. Oh, you're going to get this. This is okay. So I told Howard that. And then I remember telling him, Howard, I own 2 houses outright. I own 3 or 4 cars. I have 500 Dodger tickets for the 78 season. And I've got unlimited amount of drugs. I'm not unlimited, but I had some drugs. I have money, but I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I feel like crap. And so, it was me just using Howard as a sounding board. And Howard understood. And for all I know, they may have tapped my phone. I don't know, and I don't care. And also, I think I told you that I gave up the Mrazek hit after the two murders were reopened and I was in custody. No, I didn't. I gave it up while I was still on the run. I told Chili, and let me tell you why I remember this now. I told Chili, I said, Chili, I screwed up, and I explained to him, and then he said, okay, we're gonna have to work with that. And he said, now where's the murder? What happened to the murder weapon? So I threw it in Lake Park, in the lake, and so they sent an LAPD diving team to the area where I specifically told them where I was standing when I threw the gun, and the diving team couldn't find it. So Chili asked me he said, I don't know where you're at, but is it possible for you to come and meet with us? Steve, you probably are going to recognize that as an old DEA trick, maybe, but it doesn't matter.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know.
Fugitive on the run. Hey, we don't know where this is. Would you just meet us? We'll let you go when it's over, but just
Yeah.
come meet us, point it out, and then you can go back on the run again. Yeah.
Yes. And I told him, okay. He said, just going to be me and Steve, another task force guy. He says, just going to be Steve and I, and we'll, once you come and show us where you were standing when you threw the gun, then you can leave. You're gone. You're out of here. Okay. I said, but Gil, I'm taking you at your word. If you renege on your word to me, I'm not testifying in any case. And so I want you to know that. He goes, no, I'm not going to break my word. So when I arrived there, he appeared all nervous, as if I was being followed, maybe, and I'm putting Gil on the hot seat, but no, Gil's long retired. And so I went to the area, and I said, I stood like this, and I threw the gun like an arc, like I did with my arm, like an arc. I said, I threw it, so it had to have landed in this area. Okay, all right, go. So I left. By then, they probably planted something in my car. It doesn't matter. I wish that really did happen to make the story more juicy, but they never.
Dude, the story's juicy enough.
I
You
know.
don't have to add anything to
I
it.
know. No, I'm saying if it really did happen, if it really did happen where they bugged my car or whatever, I wish Gil would just tell me. But he said no. He swore to me, no, we didn't. We didn't do that. You got arrested on your own, and blah blah blah. And again, it doesn't matter. So they found a sheriff's diving team. The way I get the story, this time it was a sheriff's diving team that came, and they found the weapon. So they used that against LAPD. LA sheriffs used that against them. They got a rivalry. They used that against them for I don't know how many years. You guys couldn't even find the gun, and this and that. So anyway, so that's how that was revealed initially, and then when I was remanded to custody, then I had to sit down with the special prosecutor, and we worked out our immunity thing, and that was.
How did you not slip back into the life all over again once you went back to prison? Because now they know you're an informant. Now they know you've been working with the police. I guess that kind of keeps you segregated, right, from the other folks. Or how did they handle your confinement the second time?
Oh, they put me in a high power. It was a unit in Tehachapi, 13 cells. Oh, there were 13 cells, and every inmate in those cells was a prison gang dropout from either the Mexican Mafia, the Nuestra Familia, or the Aryan Brotherhood. And all of them were testifying actively in cases.
Weren't you worried about somebody poisoning your food?
Oh, no. It was all handled by staff. We were a completely separate unit, completely. There's no way. I mean, you know what I mean. And the staff handled everything there, and plus, I spent more time out of that facility testifying in cases than I did behind bars. Yeah, they would come for me to testify throughout California. They had me in Fresno, Northern Cal, Southern Cal, and they'd house me for extended periods, months at a time, in different locations.
But even then, did the temptation not um, rear its ugly head to say, "Hey, look, I could get back into this life again," or
Oh
was it
no,
after
no! It wasn't going to enter. My even when I did the act that I did of the bail bonds
the
woman,
contract
the,
killing?
the
Yeah.
contract killing. When I did that, I felt like crap. I felt I felt horrible, and I felt I'm surviving. But the explanation to that. There was a remedy for that. Well, there was another. Did I tell you guys about when we were going to kill this guy that had 4 daughters and a wife on one of the
I don't.
episodes?
I don't think so.
No, I don't believe so. No.
Okay, I had a separate residence that even the task force didn't know about.
And let's kind of book in this. Tell us in time, where does this happen at? Because you got out when you're 27, you're out for 14 months, you're back in for 5 years. Does this happen during the time you're out, or after, or when does this happen?
Well, everything I'm talking about right now is all going to be when I worked undercover.
The 14 months.
The 14-month period undercover. So I was 27 years old, Okay, so I maintained a residence in the city of Pico Rivera for the purpose of stockpiling weapons. One of my responsibilities, you should remember now, if I'm not pulling triggers, I'm involved in the drugs. Plus, any new member that would get paroled, I'd give them a weapon, some gate money, a couple $1,000s, and some drugs. I had weight scales. And of course, the task force can't know about this residence. I can't let them know that because they're not supposed to be in agreement with me selling drugs, right? So I can't, that's my pad that nobody knows about except the fellas. And so one day I got Robot and Shotgun had just gotten out of prison, and Robot brings them down to the Pico Rivera place, and we're in the place. I gave him some money, gave him some drugs, and he wants to do some work. He wants to while we're waiting to be resupplied, he wants to do something. Can I give him a connection to rip off somebody, an independent dope dealer that's selling drugs that he can rip off? And I inadvertently slipped and mentioned Poncho, and Poncho was also a target. He was an Emmett target. And so when I said that, I'm like, oh shit. And now he lit up like a Christmas tree. He says, well, that's the guy that what's his name wants him hit for XYZ reason. So anyway, I couldn't talk my way out of it. What I wanted to do was case out the place. I told him he's got 3 or 4 daughters and a wife. I said, we can't just go to his house because, there's a way to do these things. Why don't we case it out and isolate him? He doesn't know we're coming. Let's
Hey,
isolate.
Mundo,
Yes.
real quick on that point, you said there's a way to do this. What was the code of ethics? Everybody's got ethics aren't our ethics, right? But you still have your code of ethics, your code of conduct. When you had a green light on somebody and you had a target on somebody like Poncho, is the family off limits,
Yes.
or are they fair game, or
No.
what's the rules?
It is to eliminate collateral damage. That kind of collateral damage, you minimize, you eliminate it. In a case like Poncho, if you know where the target is, there's no reason to go to his residence and knock him off when you know he doesn't know you're coming. So when sooner or later he's going to leave his residence, he's comfortable living there. If he was paranoid, he wouldn't even be living there with his family. So it wasn't like we couldn't get to him. But Shotgun insisted, let's go right now. And Robot, who's a sound of reason, he thinks like me, he agreed with Shotgun. So I was outvoted 2-1. So get this. Now we're in 2 separate cars. The car that Shotgun is driving, that's following us, it's got the guns are in the trunk of his car. Okay, and apparently he had a handgun in the passenger seat in the front where he's driving. Robot and I are in the front car in the Cadillac. He's following us, and when we get about 4 blocks from the target's residence, I had already made up my mind. I'm processing all this as I'm talking to Robot, and we're on our way and everything. And I had already made up my mind that there's a sawed-off shotgun in the trunk and a couple of handguns. I was going to make sure that I got the sawed-off shotgun, and it doesn't take 3 of us to kill Poncho. The chances of collateral damage, all of them being female, the daughters and the wife, are high because we're going into the residence. All right. So my thoughts were, if Poncho is there alone, which is very doubtful, it doesn't take 3 of us pulling triggers. They can go ahead, or shotgun can kill them, or shotgun and Robot can kill them, and I could stand guard and then call Chili when they're done. Right. Okay. But if I see one female, one of the girls or the wife, in my mind, I had no option but to blow away shotgun and Robot with the shotgun, and then throw myself at the mercy of the task force and tell Chili, this is what I've done. I did it to save their lives, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So check what happens. We're on the frontal street of Huntington Drive. There's like a frontal street that runs parallel to the Huntington Drive, and there's buildings all the way to this corner. Shotgun passes us, like he got impatient or whatever. He passes us, and he runs the stop sign, and he makes a right and runs a stop sign. When we arrive at the stop sign, I stop. I'm driving. I stop at the stop sign. I make a right, and he's pulled over by an LAPD black and white that had another car pulled over on a traffic thing. They must have obviously seen him run the stop sign, and immediately pulled him over, and he complied. We kept driving about a half a block, and then we made a quick right, got off the car, walked a little bit and looked, and they had him handcuffed, and they had the trunk open. So now we knew. They got into the trunk, they found the weapons.
Well, didn't you say he had a weapon with him in the front seat?
That's what gave them the probable cause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, Murph, there's a role for traffic cops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that's the reason I thought you were saying that you wanted the shotgun. Number one, shotgun's not a highly accurate weapon, and especially when it's sawed off. So that in the hands of somebody crazy, there could be collateral damage. But do you see? I mean, your logic, while it's sound, it's perverse, right? It's like,
yes.
Well, I'm setting this thing up, but if they go to do that, I'm going to kill them instead.
Yeah.
When did you finally break that way of thinking? Because I got to tell you, dude.
Yeah.
I know. You're right cannon. There, ready to go back to prison, man.
Yeah. So that's I guess. Well, I'll tell you where I think when they remanded me to custody. Remember, they arrested me in Atlantic Square. In the last episode, I described to you how all these agencies converged, and I thought I was going to be in the middle of a shootout. And they took me into custody. I end up in the county jail, and they put me in what's called the ME tank, 1750. That's the module for Mexican Mafia members. So I'm there with Joe Morgan, with Robot, with all the who's of that are in the county. They're all embracing me. Hey, what's up, brother? And I tell how they reopened the murder cases in Bakersfield. Blah blah blah. So
doesn't Joe want you killed at this point?
He doesn't know. Nobody knows.
He doesn't know.
No.
Oh, okay. Nobody knows.
None of this is revealed until the paperwork. Paperwork wasn't. There's no way there's going to be paperwork on me while I'm undercover. Now I'm in custody, and there's still not going to be paperwork until I come up front and begin to interview with prosecutors, which I've already did. Well, no, I hadn't. I hadn't interviewed with the special prosecutor yet. The task force had that under wraps. And again, if the task force was involved in my apprehension, well, then cool. That's good. But now there's paperwork, but not yet. I'm still there with the fellas. So there's nothing on me. Otherwise, I'd be a dead duck. So we take turns using the public phone to make phone calls to attorneys, to family members, whatever. So they relinquished the phone to me so I could make a phone call. So I did, pretended to call a relative, but in reality, I'm calling Chile, and I'm telling Chile, you know what? All I'm getting here is just a bunch of bullshit of who's got to get whacked, and they're telling me, well, this guy's going to die, but we don't want to kill him in here because we got to do it this way, and so they're telling me everybody that's going to get killed, but I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm no longer. I'm facing time. I've got a stretch to do. I've already served my purpose. I got cases I'm going to give them that they already have ready to roll. And now all these guys, I'm just got a headache from hearing all the bullshit, all the nonsense. So he says, "So are you telling me you want me to tell the commander that to pull you out of there?" In other words, if it's up to him, as long as I'm not in danger, just stay undercover, right?
Stay collecting intel, conversations,
yeah,
planning what's going on, right?
Yeah, but I was no longer comfortable. I was no longer buying it, no longer interested, and so they locked me up. They took me to the hospital section of the jail. I was escorted, and that's where they kept O.J. Simpson years later when he did his thing. So that's when I was done completely with everything. The games, the rogueness, the profiting from being undercover, for sliding back into that world because I knew how to do it. Whatever.
I don't want to say you were a cat like with 9 lives, but man, you got so many bites at the apple that your average person, especially your average banger, your average, Mexican Mafia,
Yeah.
you never. I mean, you got more chances than anybody else. I mean, Murph, do you know anybody else listening to this story that got as many bites at the apple as him?
No, not nearly the freedom that you were given. I mean, in today's world, especially in DEA, the agent probably would have been brought up on charges.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It would have been pretty embarrassing as understatement.
Yeah.
Well, different time, but one thing is with our remaining time too, we wanted to talk about too, which by the way, that was new information. But you're finally out of it. But let's kind of bring it forward too, because one of the other topics we wanted to talk about too, because everybody's listening to this and to go, it's, in some ways it's like, it's exciting. People live vicariously. They live through your eyes. They live through somebody else's eyes. They go, gee, what would it be like to do that? They can live without taking the risk. But then cops kind of get caught up in this too. It's kind of like we see people who investigate dope or certain gangs. It's like, well, it's not just I'm a gang investigator. I do Mexican Mafia, or I do the Colombo family, or I do organized crime, or I'm cartel.
Yeah.
I'm setting it up to where there's like a caste system. I am perceived to be at a higher level than anybody else. And you had an interesting comment about that because you said you wanted to talk about demystifying this whole thing around gangs and investigations. Let's get into that. What did you mean by that? What do you see as the issue because of that?
And this might be misconstrued by some, but when I hear it, it kind of, I don't know, it kind of gives me heebie-jeebies. I know many knowledgeable gang cops, and when I interact with a lot of them, or when I did in recent years and decades, many times I would hear them talking. Some of the guys talking about a character, whether it's Joe Morgan, whether it's Mike Eisen, Kilroy, Big D, Donald Garcia was a boxer and a killer, and these guys would use the term, well, they would say things like, I had a lot of respect for him. I had a lot of respect. That guy was a legend, this and that. And I totally get what they're saying, because you have, let's just use the cartel as an example. You have, when I say groupies, you have guys that thrive on the status of the detail they work, whether it's cartel, whether it's mob at a different scale, prison gang, Aryan Brotherhood, Mexican Mafia. So I get that they're coming from that perspective. But nevertheless, it just rubs me the wrong way when I hear them almost glorifying these guys. And I've had officers tell me that there are guys that they actually do glorify them. They hold them up in a pedestal. And me, as the years have gone by, especially, I look at it like, if we want to get to the young people and demystify, you got to burst the bubble. And how do you burst the bubble? By giving them the reality check of what that life is about, how deceptive it is, how disloyal it is. They use the word loyalty. There is no loyalty. You're expendable at the end of the day. If somebody wakes up at the wrong, see, one thing you get in prison, you get the ability, you have plenty of time. And, I know that sounds funny. You got time. You're in prison doing time.
That's all you've got is time, right?
That's all you got is time. You have time to think. So, Morgan, if you and I have some good rackets going, I'm in prison, you're on the streets. Hey, I'm reaping benefits from my prison cell, and Murphy is one of our big money earners. But now we get hit with some RICOs, and we're scrambling to cover our bases. So what do you do when you cover your bases? You start eliminating people, right? That might know too much. That can bring you down.
Murph's getting a little nervous here.
So Murphy knows too much. Murphy
No,
is.
I've never heard that said before. Hold on a second. Is that true, Murph?
Keep going, Mundo. Keep going.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying. I'm using him as an example. Murphy knows too much. So I wake up on the wrong side of the bed. I go, Morgan, I hate to tell you this, but we need to do something about Murphy. And you're like, why? No, me and Murphy, I mean, we're good. I said, dude, it's not about you. It's not about anything but making sure that the loose ends are taken care of. We tie up all loose ends. He's got too much knowledge that can put us away, and other brothers. So that's what I mean about expendable. If you're not a made man, if you're not a brother, you are expendable no matter how important you are, because you can be replaced.
So, Mundo, how would you go about then? Like you said, it's not like you get this email or a certified letter says, hey, we want you to go whack Murph. How does that conversation happen to where you just end up saying, yeah, we got to take care of Murph? I mean, is it with something like this, is it very specific, like you have to identify the person, or how does it come about to where you don't have to really say much, but everybody knows, hey, Murph's got to go?
There's, I think we talked about this before, but there's multitudes of way of communicating this. You can communicate it in coded talk. You can make a joke out of it. Like we had a sane Alfie. Alfie was one of our triggermen. Alfie Sosa, the one I got in Tijuana, the one I told you, I talked about earlier. Okay. Alfie, and a circle of us that were part of a hit squad. We had a way of communicating when we talked about having a bottle of Thunderbird. Thunderbird is wine, cheap wine from back when I was a kid. Whenever you would drink cheap wine, it was Thunderbird, and that's what a kid could afford. The cheapest wine, if you're going to go to the store and somebody's going to buy T-Bird. So when we would use that term, hey, when you see Johnny, give him my best and have a bottle of T-Bird with him. All right, yeah, I'll do that. I'll get nice and drunk on your behalf or whatever. So we turn it into whenever the word Thunderbird would come out, that was the code for killing that person. But it could be anything. It doesn't have to be T-Bird. I'm just using that as an example.
What I'm saying, but that would be understood between you. If you told somebody, hey, let's go out and have a bottle of T-Bird with the guy, that was implied that, okay, he's got to go.
Yes. With enough people a circle of people. So if I told you that and Murph didn't know that code, well, you already know. So then when you hook up with Murph, you tell him, hey, I just got word from Mundo. We need to take care of this person. You don't have to tell him we have a code word called Thunderbird. You just tell him this person's got to go. And then boom, it's taken care of.
Well, and so let's wrap that back into what we were talking about demystifying stuff, because at the end of the day, like you say, it's not as sexy as you think. I mean, it's a hard life, it's a rough life.
Yeah.
Somebody one day, they're dead tomorrow. But so when we talk about demystifying it and bringing it down a notch, not glorifying this stuff, well, how do we do it? How do we do it from the law enforcement side? How do we do it from the community side?
Well,
from the kids?
Yeah. Well, with the kids, it's an easier task, I think, than we think. With the gang members, it's a lot more difficult because they've already bought into it. They're already brainwashed. The reality check is when you tell them, look, if you screw up, you're expendable. Then in their minds, they believe that they can be made. They're aspiring members. They want, their dream is to someday reach that mountaintop where they become inducted and become a member. So they have that aspiration. So they're not going to go against the code. If you're brainwashed, I wasn't going to go against the code. There's no way you're going to convince me. With your nickel and dime reasoning, I'm coming from a bad guy's point of view. Your nickel and dime psychology and your nickel and dime reasoning is not going to make me turn against my brothers. That would have been my attitude as a brainwashed guy. Okay, so that's the way they look at anybody coming. I mean, at me, that old rat. I'm every expletive in the world. I'm a turncoat. I turned against them. When I hear the words, when I hear the words honor, respect, attributed to a gang member, I cringe because that shouldn't even be in the same sentence. That should be reserved for our military, our law enforcement. I think I've mentioned this before, and these guys have a completely different value system that they've adopted. They've created a different value system where to be evil is the right thing to do. To be a criminal is the right thing to do, and to go against it makes you a turncoat, makes you no good. See, it's just like what we're talking about society today. How the suspects turn the table around and make themselves into victims. That's just
that's an excellent point too, because you see, and our gang investigators are some dedicated individuals. So I'm not calling you out as a group, but Morgan and I, we go to gang conferences, and that's where we met you, as a matter of fact. And you see how these guys are all tatted up like a gang member. And I know some of them are working undercover, but I also know not all of them are working undercover. They just do it because it's almost like they're to a degree
factor.
Adopting that appearance and lifestyle.
Well, tattoos today are very, very, very acceptable, more so than ever before. And the proof of the pudding, look at our beautiful female species. Look at all the women with tattoos. And you don't judge a book by its cover. You never judge a book by its cover. A lot of them are military, a lot of them are law enforcement, a lot of them are straight, good people. I have nothing against, and I don't even have nothing against tattoos. All I'm saying is that they've gotten even more. You've got them on their necks, everywhere. It's much more acceptable now, and I don't
and
know
what they don't realize is, as you start getting older and everything starts, sagging and going south, man, those tattoos.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing is you don't think about that later, right? It's like, in I got to tell you, even in college, I went to college in the late '70s, early '80s. Never saw anybody with a tattoo until I went through basic training, went through military and stuff. But even then, Murph, you remember it too. It's like even applying for law enforcement. If you could see a tattoo, that was a disqualification. You couldn't get hired if if you wore a short sleeve shirt, but somebody could see your tattoo. Then it's but then the problem, to your point, Mundo, it got hard to recruit people. So what did they have to do? They had to change their standards.
Right.
They had to say, well, you can have a tattoo, but it can't be. But I tell you, there are some times where I look at people and they have what they call sleeves. It's like from their shoulder all the way down to their wrist, and I'm going, for all that money you put in there, that could have been a down payment on a car or maybe pay off a college loan.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't understand that attraction.
And again, that part of it is not an indictment on anybody. But what I think what we're discussing here is how it carries over into the gray area with the gang people. Oh well, I got tattoos. That doesn't make the person. That used to be the argument that gang members used to make to their parents. We used to make those to our parents when we were putting on tattoos, and dressing up like gang members, wearing khakis and Pendletons and the attire that we used to put on back in the day. And we would protest to our parents and say, the clothing doesn't make the individual. That's bullshit. And I'll tell you what I mean when I say it's bullshit. If you are dressed in gang attire and you're walking down the street and another gang drives up in a car and they recognize somebody dressed in similar gang attire, I know times have changed, but what's the first thing that comes out of their mouth, at least with a Hispanic gang member? Where are you from? There is no right or wrong answer. If you're not from their neighborhood, if you were from their neighborhood, they would know. They wouldn't be asking you, where are you from? So when they're
if you're not from their neighborhood, you got problems.
And it's tantamount to a challenge from which there is no right answer. If you say you're from nowhere, they're still inclined to cap you. If you say you're from another neighborhood, they're going to open fire on you. Anyway.
And God forbid you say you're from the wrong neighborhood. That's their biggest rival.
Yeah.
And you bring up a very good point. It's from the movie, but I know Patton I don't know if you ever saw the movie Patton with George C. Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Where he played General Patton. Yeah. He actually had a great line, and you bring it up too. It's one of the reasons why, and I'm getting philosophical here for a second, but it's one of the reasons why I never got tattoos. I never did that route. But Patton said he made these guys start shaving, getting up, dressing. He says, if they don't look like soldiers, they're not going to act like soldiers. So you had to make them dress. You had to make them be proud. With the State Patrol, when I was a trooper and stuff, they measured all of our uniforms. They were custom made. They came in, battle uniform came in, and they did stuff so that we looked good in our uniforms. It was part of looking the part. But you brought up something. This has always been my philosophy. I never got down, and I want to ask you to think about it this way. Let's say that we were in conflict with each other. I'm the cop. I'm the detective. You're the banger, and I'm talking to you. I'm going to interview you. But I'm coming at it from a different places. I'm not trying to get down to your level. I'm not using your language. I'm not using your street language. I'm doing what I do well, which is I know my language. I know how I talk. I know how to interview well. I know how to interrogate. Does it make a difference when you got somebody coming at you that says, look, dude, you do what you do, but I do what I do. I'm a pro at what I do. I dress the part. I look the part like a pro. Does that make a difference in that gang member's mind to when you've got somebody who's not playing their game? They say, look, it's easy to come down to your level. It's very difficult for you to operate at my level.
There's something to be said about both, because I know many guys that, I mean, they don't pour it on like Edward James Olmos or anything, but they understand the streets so well that they can talk the talk with them. And that's like a rapport or a connection that's either going to help them. If that gang member is predisposed to not interact with you regardless of who you are, then they're going to dummy up on you anyway. Okay, but that many times that will work with certain guys. That communication there, that ethnic communication. If you're a black guy and you talk the talk from wherever, from the Bronx or whatever, okay, that'll help you. But there's also something to be said about the Peabodys of the world. Peabody was an LAPD guy that I remember that and Jeffries, very good rapport with the community. He didn't talk the talk. He didn't look like a gang member. They were white guys, and they immediately went to the parents. Those two guys immediately went to the families and talked and got cozy, familiar with the fathers and mothers, and mostly mothers, because most of the guys didn't have dads at home, and mostly the mothers, and would talk to them and say, look, what can I do to help you with your son? Because he's going to end up behind bars. I caught him with an open container. I poured the beer out. I gave him a pass. I gave him a break. I just brought him home to your custody. Next time, I'll take him in. I told him that. What can we do to help? What can you and I do to help? And that's how they develop their informants. It was mom who'd pick up the phone and say, hey, there's a group of guys over here. I think they're getting loaded on dope. I'm not sure. Could you please come and break them up? That's how developing informants, establishing a rapport, letting them know that you care, establishing a credibility, and whoever says, I'm not a babysitter, I'm not a shrink, I'm a cop. That was back in the day. Today, I'm sorry, but you are all of those things. Especially if you care about the job that you do, then you're going to be a Dr. Phil. You are going to have to exercise some customer service skills in talking to a gang member's parents. What's wrong with that? You're establishing a rapport. You're helping your partners that patrol that same area not to be looked upon as the enemy.
I got a question for you, Murph. Have you ever had those times where you worked with an informant and it got to the point where the informant really trusted you? They would not just call you about crimes that are going on, but they call you up with girlfriend problems, work problems.
Yes. Yes.
How funny.
And I mean, you talk about having to go into an undercover role, because I didn't give a crap about their personal lives. I was about business, but you've got to come across as if you do care if you want them to continue to produce.
Yeah. And I remember one guy too, he ended up doing some work for me. Actually, we cleared some cases and stuff, but I remember the phone rings 2:00 one night. What the hell? And it's the department. Hey, this guy needs to talk to you. Okay. Called. What's going on, Frank? I won't give his last name, Frank. My girlfriend broke up with me. Dude, it's 2:00 in the frickin' morning. But to your point, Mundo, it's like you made an impression on somebody. To your point, Steve, you got to sell it too, right? So you sell it. Hey, look, man, let's get together. We'll have coffee. We'll talk about it. But
right.
But Mundo, but you hit the nail on the head, I think, with what it is everybody's got to recognize what their style is. My style was not to get down and get tats on and try and talk their language, because I would have come across as fake, as not authentic. I would have come across as a poser, right?
Yes.
I was me, but I did me really well. But the one thing you mentioned, it's having those relationships with the family and other stuff, because that's, again, if you can't build that foundation. We did shop with the cop. We try to do stuff with kids. Our fraternal order police did, we'd raise money, go out, take kids shopping, try and fill that hole for them. But it all goes back to you, right? It's that family unit. Because we're going to bring this to a close. We got a few minutes left, but it goes back to that solid family unit. I think you hit it at the beginning, and I want to hit it this time. It's got to be getting back to where that family unit is intact. When you look at Black Americans and you look at what's going on, where they were the most stable was back in the early 60s, where you had mother and father living at home. You had 2-parent families. Same thing with Hispanic families. Same thing with whites, right? When you start getting into that single parent family where their income starts dropping, they go into lower socioeconomic status, they're living in different areas. That's where the problems come back out. To me, it's just going back to that solid, quote, nuclear family, but, solid family unit.
Hopelessness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You start touching on a lot of hopelessness. And when you don't have hope, you get desperate and you start getting,
you'll take attention from whoever. You'll take attention from whoever gives it to you, and who gives it well is the gangs when they're recruiting you.
And you become more bold, and I don't want to call it courage, but you become more bold about committing crimes and not caring if you get caught, because you're not going to get any time.
And I think that's one thing that amazes me most is, especially with the gang members, if this is a legitimate feeling or not, but they just don't seem to care if they go to prison.
No. And then there's no longer, from what I understand, out there in, I say out there because everything for me goes back to California, is they no longer have a California Youth Authority. I don't know if it's for budget reasons or other philosophical reasons, but those kids need, there has to be something for the kids, because otherwise they're at the mercy of the adults, and the adults will have them. They'll have them doing their bidding, and it'll become
Absolutely.
like Mexico or the Latin American countries.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have to talk about that too. So look, hey, well, let's bring this to a close, and let's just finish up with this. Is in terms of, we asked you last time, what are you doing now? I know you still go out and you talk to a lot of folks. What is it? I know what you're doing now. What is it you will be doing in the future? Are you going to change some of the things you're talking about? Have you got any new programs or any new things you're working on? New book? I think you were talking about a book when we last met too.
Yeah, several book projects, and one of them I'll take the liberty to reveal. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie Colors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sean Penn and Robert Duvall. Well, the real life character that Sean Penn played was the character of Pac-Man, and his name is Tony Moreno. He's a LAPD retired gang officer. So it was his idea. I discovered some time back that he was born and raised not far from where I was born and raised, and he was born on the White Fence side of the freeway, which was our mortal enemy. And so it was his brainchild, and he asked me, "What are your thoughts of doing a book together of two guys?" We have provisionally entitled it "The Boys from Boyle Heights." So we both came from Boyle Heights, and so it's a book. It's a case study on two guys born in similar conditions. One became a gang member and came back, and the other one became a police officer. So that's a project that we're actively working on. I'm also working on other books on the Mexican Mafia, on things that have training value. Also working on a project on youth, how gangs destroy families. So that's a project that I'm working on with some individuals, retired law enforcement guys, and a retired gang member. I've been mentoring for over a decade. I've mentored some cartel members that were assassins that gave up that life, and they were thrown at me. I jokingly say that they were thrown at me by a guy that used to work cartels, and I've become like their Dear Abby or their Dr. Phil, which I don't care. I tease myself about that, but I find it rewarding to be able to help them in some capacity, not to hate themselves. And a lot of what helps me help them is my Christian foundation. And so, because that's the only way I think that anybody can really be forgiven, or find forgiveness, I should say, is to embrace the Lord, and to recognize that there is a God that forgives you. And so those are the projects that I'm working on. I kind of feel like I'm in a race with time, because I'm not in bad health, or I'm in good health. But
no, but I say the same thing. I got more years behind me than I have ahead of me. You got to make that next season of life. It's really got to count.
Yeah, I want to be productive.
And your background, you know what I think about your faith. God bless you. I'm proud of what you're doing. Like we said last time, I didn't think I'd ever call somebody a former Mexican Mafia member a brother, but we're brothers in Christ.
Yes.
But your credibility comes from your past when you're talking to these individuals. So, whoever sought you out to be a mentor, what you tell them means so much more to them than what I would say or Morgan would say or even a pastor would say, because
somebody,
you've been there
I read a
and
book one time that said this. You go, yeah, pal, whatever,
exactly.
Yeah.
I did time. Yeah, there's a big.
Who would think that my life as a bad guy would? I mean, I still have some of these guys, and you're going to laugh when I say when active Sureño gang members refer to Mexican mafia members or address them. They address them. One of the words they call them is tío, T-I-O, Spanish for uncle. All right, and that's just a normal salutation. Hey, tío, or yeah, he's a tío. He's one of the tíos. So that's almost like a word for member. Well, these former cartel guys, some who have been in the California prison system and know of my past and this and that, I had a couple of them call me tío. And I'm looking at them like, I know what they mean. They mean it in the form of respect, but I'm trying to make them understand that, hey, that calling me tío from a gang's way of using it is not, I don't look at it as respectful, but I know that's what you mean. So I'll let you get away with it. So we joke about it. Why would they call me tío? You see what I mean? As if I'm still active, and as if they're still active. That's an old habit, but it was a form of respect in the gang world, and it's a form of respect even when you pull away. Apparently.
Well, apparently it was a good enough sign of respect that even though they know who you are and what you've done and you went against the gang, that they still referred to you that way. So I like the way you played it. It's like, hey, I know you meant respect, T.O., but when we're now in the real world where we're doing this kind of stuff, here's why you can't use T.O. This is why we have to change. If you want to change your life, that's it. You got to change the way you think about it. You got to change the way you talk about it. You got to change the way you dress. You can't dress like, if you keep dressing like a gangbanger, you're going to end up going back to being a gangbanger.
And that's the only reason that I think when we talk about, for using the example of law enforcement officers with all these tattoos and the gang attire and the gang look and this and that, okay, it's not a personal attack on any of these guys. I bet you 95% of them are salt of the earth. 98% of them are salt of the earth, kick ass, good cops. No, but it's the example to the impressionable ones that think it's okay to dress that way. They think it's okay to put on a tattoo, which could be a gang tattoo. I'm just saying,
No. You hit it, because you remember in the days too, remember when you were growing up, right? It was real easy to tell the difference between the detectives and the police officers, and everybody else, right?
Sure.
When it becomes so hard as that one blends into the other, you start wondering, well, where's the difference? Where's the daylight between your position and their position?
Right. That's it. That's all. I mean, we're going
to have a separate discussion all over again. So maybe we'll think about this too, because there's still more territory to cover. But you go do what you do. Stay in touch with us. Let us know what's going on, because we want to follow up on this. Again, great stuff. So first of all, thank you, Ramon Mundo Mendoza. Like I said, we've got his book up there on our site. Previous guest, episode 106, I believe it was. Wasn't it, Murph?
103.
103. I'm sorry, 103. It came out in June. Yeah, it came out June 19th. So you guys go back and listen to episode 103. A lot of good stuff in there. But Mundo, we thank you for coming on. And again, you have a distinguished place of honor in the Hall of Game of Crimes. You are our first two-timer.
Oh, wow.
And we're not talking about prison. We're talking about being a guest on the podcast.
No, I don't need that, because then I'm a habitual criminal.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. So
you don't want third strike and you're out.
Yeah, well, dude, keep up the good work. You're doing the Lord's work. Again, you're back here for a reason. You got the breaks. You got the 9 lives for a reason, and it's to keep doing what you're doing. And look, again, I think the Lord looks at it seriously. It's like you're saying, Murph and I could go out and we could talk about stuff, but it doesn't carry the same impact and the same credibility as somebody who lived the life, who was there, and you can go, you can shine other people on, you can't shine me on because I've been there, I've lived that life, I know what it's like, and this is why. When you tell somebody they have to change versus me telling somebody they have to change, you bring a lot more credibility and impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
And we do appreciate you coming back on.
Well,
Mundo.
God bless you guys. Thank you for having me on board. And again, I feel like I've said the same thing, but many different ways and to many different people. But that's okay. I mean, it's
messages. I heard one time like training. Somebody said training is like bathing. Neither one is permanent. You just can't throw a message out there one time and it sticks. You got to come at them. You got to find a way to get it across to them until it sticks. So,
and you're not just talking about your past experiences. You're throwing out potential solutions on here's the problems and here's a potential way to address it. And that's what we really appreciate about having you on here.
Yeah.
It's got to start in the family. I agree with that 100%. So thank you for coming back on.
All right, guys. Well, when tell me when you stop recording the audio, because I want to ask you something.
Oh, okay, that's the good stuff. Well, here's how you know that we're stopped recording the audio. Don't you guys go anywhere. You guys hang tight. Everybody else, stay tuned for the debrief. I hope everybody was paying attention. Again, if you can't learn from this guy, I don't know who you could learn from. And this guy was what he did, what he was responsible for. He's given parents ideas about what you can do. Now, are all of them correct? I don't know. As they say, your mileage may vary. But Steve, I got to tell you again, when we talk with him, how gracious he was about giving us his time and being transparent. We've talked to guys. It's like William Rodriguez. He still kind of couch things. He's still, oh, no, it wasn't me. I was only a money guy. It's like they still weren't taking full responsibility. Mundo is like, no, I did it. I killed him. Here's what I did. Here's how I did it. Here's why I did it. He didn't have any hesitation about telling us.
Right. It was extremely educational, and most of our listeners know this. And if you don't, this is why we bring these people on. There are some extremely violent people in this world, and Mundo was one of them. And his cohorts, all his colleagues that he was in prison with, that he hung out with when he wasn't in jail. These are people that will kill you just simply because they feel that you disrespected them, and kill you in a very heinous way. Not just come up and shoot you and let it go at that. Torture you, and it's just amazing what goes on out there. But believe it or not, there's still some Pollyannas, or I don't know what you'd call them, that don't believe that things like that happen in our world. What a naive way to look at the world. It's sad that it's like that, but it's true. And thank you to Mundo for, being open and honest with us, giving us the inside look of the mafia there, the Mexican mafia. Brother, I hope you stay on the right side of the law. None of us have that many years left, and we know where we want to go when this is all over.
Yeah. But again, I hope you guys learned a lot from that. I did too. And like I said, it's interesting listening, and and again, it's that age kind of 11, 12, 13. That is prime recruiting stuff. It's the area where kids feel disaffected. They're looking for attention. They're looking for validation. They're looking to belong. They're looking for somebody to appreciate them. As tough it is, and look, you and I have raised kids. We've all gone through those stages. That's a tough time to go through, but you got to be there for them. You got to be there for them. So, hey, look, guys, again, we didn't want to make light of this. This one's just kind of a straightforward thing. But just make sure you go visit us, gameofcrimespodcast.com. Visit us on the socials at Game of Crimes on Twitter, Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. Visit our Game of Crimes fan page. Just go to Game of Crimes Fans. Type that into Facebook. Join our private group run by Sandy Salvato, our favorite mafia queen, the Iron Fist with the velvet glove. And also join us on patreon.com/Game of Crimes. I mean, we put a lot of stuff there. So apologize for the brevity on the intro, outro. You guys have heard it before, but this one, again, we wanted to respect the topic, not disrespect the memories, the people who've died because of this. And so we hope you guys appreciated this. Hope you guys learned something from it. And we want to thank you guys once again for playing, as you found out, the biggest, baddest, most truly dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.